bias?
Bullshit, guys. Bull!
How are you just
But anyway, so what happened was like I
And music, I had to say,
away from the sewers.
and that's how we got it.
Do that again. But then the zombies like figured it out, and I was like, oh,
Don't expect anything too
I was
much.
like panicking. I'm like, why do they keep chasing these? Why are they smart? Why couldn't they be dumb like last time? I was so sad. I was like, they're birds, dude.
We only use a sample.
Remember that zombie dream I told you about?
Yeah.
So I was hiding in the sewers like first time I had that dream, and then like the second time,
As long as you didn't
I decided I was like, oh, I was hiding in the sewers again. But then like the zombies noticed, and then they were like going after me. I was like, they learned for the first dream. I was like running. I was like, are you kidding me? It was the worst. Dude, that scared me.
Shaquem.
Yo, first, before we get into this, can somebody play me the actual sample that was provided?
Yes. Can I play it on your laptop?
Uh,
Or I can put it on his. I'll just
Yeah,
put
do
it
that.
on. You play it.
No.
Only alright. See, this was fun.
Yeah, you can give him a video. I've been
Hey
looking.
guys, sit down. Sit down.
Alright,
I
original.
refuse. I'm standing.
This is absolutely trash.
Yo, Wenjay.
Should I sing along for you?
Brian.
Sing along.
Brian, Wenjay. We found 6 of the mats
In the black mats.
in
random
Shakim's
room.
producing room.
Oh, what the
Nice. How did they have
I went to get Shakim and I just see the mats lying around. I was like, what the heck?
Are those the only ones we were missing?
I don't know.
Oh, we used plastic
When
wall.
I heard this shit, I'm like, Emma, you fucking.
yeah, I knew it. I was like, you guys would. You guys definitely would. You know, when I was in Japan, I honestly could have picked up this record, but I ended up just even just getting anime records.
I wish.
Except for a couple like top drama stuffs, but one of the records that I got actually was the show that gave, in essence, the theme for Case Closed, Detective Conan.
Okay.
So I didn't figure this until like I started listening to the record. And I'm like, oh, this looks like a dope record. It's got some cops. It's clearly from the 70s and such. Like, let's check this out. Start listening to them. Oh shit. I was watching Detective Conan on the fucking plane right there.
Should it be like this?
Not detective.
Wait, but this way.
Alright, bringing the funk. So, that is the song.
All right.
Just like those
Alright,
facial
Shaquem, you
expressions
ready?
slowly change.
Let's do this.
Yeah, take your time.
Oh,
Or just
are we just playing it from Logic, or can we?
I thought you could just play it like straight up.
Yeah.
Play everything at once and then pick out your favorite.
So, okay.
Great sample sound. I like it.
Yes.
If you need to export it first, by all means.
Take your time. In fact, I'll just.
Wait, can we just get something else up next first?
No!
No?
Exporting doesn't take that long.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Something sounds like someone that finished. I guess,
I mean, yeah, I didn't
yeah.
finish.
Everyone's like, ah, I gotta export
Yeah,
now.
yeah, let's take this opportunity to all
Is it
export
export time?
songs.
Yeah, it's export time.
Alright, mine's probably clipping or something.
Yeah, same here.
I didn't mix it.
Oh man.
I didn't mix mine at all.
But I don't know what it should look like.
So mine's probably clipping like.
All right, somebody help me out here. What is the name of, I know the first bit of it, but I always mess up the end. Keep your hands off. Iki something. It's the anime that's out right now that's about
Oh, it's like Azo-kun something. I don't know.
You know the Japanese name, not the.
Easy Breezy.
Wait, really?
Easy breezy cover girl.
Alright, alright.
Wait, I know what you're talking about. I recently saw on YouTube. I was like,
Yeah.
shoot.
Say it again. Or... pause button.
We're in some kind of
Yo, I don't do that for top rappers.
I got my top rock this.
You're right.
Yes.
Okay, I like it.
No, stop that.
We're rendering it all into full seconds. Okay.
And it just stopped.
Okay.
That was the
Yo, yo.
Okay. Contestant number 2 is.
No, wait. I want to. For
You wanna
each.
give feedback every
So,
time?
so I'll give feedback later. But one of the things I want to do for each of you, after you're done playing your beat, run me through what you actually did to like. Give me a soundbite of like what went through your process for like putting that beat together. Like what went through your head. Like you heard the sample. Now what?
Well, I actually
You got a mic.
Okay, go.
Also introduce yourself.
Alright, name's Shaquem. You know me? You remember?
Nah.
I do now.
Producer.
I like it.
Anyway, when I heard the sample, I first tried to like pitch shift it down. They think that sounded good. And I changed it literally like an hour into it. So I already had like an hour to work with what I had. So I basically just went the other way, pitch shifted the sample up, and multiplied like I did like a time multiplier for it, so I could like stretch it out so it fit with like the drum beat that I use. And after that, I felt like it was kind of boring with it just like the sample loop, so I just like chopped it up into sections a little bit. And when I kept doing it, actually, I felt like I took like basically what I thought were like the 4 most memorable sections, and then use that for the beat. So of course the opening, of course, to like lay the foundation, and then like the slow beat shift near the end. So I took that. At the end, I really didn't know what to do at the end. So just to like end it off, I sort of like just reversed the sample. So it could get.
You know, sometimes reversing a sample can actually do a lot of good for you. There's a track that I put out on one of my recent EPs where an entire bar of the song is just first half playing straight, second half looped backwards, but because it's sort of like strings, you can't tell. So sometimes you have those nice little samples that like, they're fun to play with in that regard. You had an interesting like drum pattern going on with your stuff. I'm not gonna say it's quite Dilla inspired. So like, where was your mind at with like how your arrangement was? Because it seemed to like be a little bit experimental.
Well, actually, being honest, it kind of was Dilla inspired a little bit. As
You see the door?
Anyway, aside from Dilla, there were just like other things that I wanted to take. I didn't know where to go like hardcore with it, like Odd Future type, or just go like make it more subtle, sort of like what Dre used to do. So I just like said fuck it, and then this like compromise between the two when I was making a drum pattern. And the second set of drums was actually because I didn't know how to transition between the sample shifts, so I just kept putting in different like drum patterns until I found what was right, and that was the one that I felt was right.
I definitely say like, in terms of experimental music, you're definitely going in a good direction. I have a couple of friends that have that sort of vibe to them. Things that I would suggest moving forward with that beat, if you were to continue with it, is play around with effects. There's a lot of fun things you could do. Isolate a little bit of either the drums to help them lift up a little bit more and punch through the actual samples, or find other ways that you can find a chance to EQ things so that it blends a little better, so that you create a sense of balance between things.
Got it. Thank you.
Yo, give it up for him. Yo, who's next down? Chopping block. Odo?
Alright, it's our very own Kelman.
Hello.
Hey, Calvin.
Contestant numero dos.
Let's go.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
Let's go.
Beautiful project.
Okay.
So,
Let's hear it. I heard good things about this.
yeah.
Is this
I heard
garage
good things
band?
about
This
this.
is garage.
Oh, flashback. Yeah, shit. Yeah, shit.
I was about to say, GarageBand got canned recently. I was looking through my iMac and whatnot, and like, the Catalina update killed GarageBand apparently.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting too good.
It's getting too good.
Like, no joke.
It could equal shit, man. Apple is the king. Is it?
Alright, let's hit it.
Oh, how loud is this supposed to be?
That's why I have not updated it to Catalina yet.
Just quiet as hell. It's just this loop.
Pretty fucking tight. I like it.
Yo, give it up for him.
What was the mastermind
Alright.
behind this track?
So I spent the first 2 hours making like
You only had 2 hours.
the first hour. I made this. I basically made like a chopped up version of the, I guess phrase, which whatever. You probably heard it. But I got too ambitious because I wanted to make something that was like super choppy and stuff. So I basically cut it up into like 8-bar phrases, layered them on top of each other, and took parts from each of them, sort of like maintain the chord progression and do that. I wasn't intending on making it like house stuff, house nightcore or whatever.
Future funk.
But that's not what I ended up doing. And then the intro and outro, I was like, all right, I have no time to make this. This is the last like 15 minutes. So I was like, all right, if I just make it a hard cut, I can be like, oh, it's an artistic choice, you know? So I think it turned out well. I tried to make the kick out of a snare, so probably not the smartest move, but that's why it's really boomy and stuff.
True story. I've used my voice for both a hi-hat and a bass line before.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the time to go through my samples to find like whatever instrument was like just
Yeah.
Nice. Classic. Yeah.
Very nice.
it works.
Yeah. So that's my remix.
Thank you, Kelly. Very nice. Alright, do you have anything to say?
I honestly think that was incredibly solid. I'd say the next steps would be giving the track a little dynamic so that it has a little bit ups and downs, and then having like little like at this point like as a I forget who. I think it was DJ Newmark once did a rhythm roulette where he used a clapping sound or something. I mean, it's a terrible example, but the idea here is he made the analogy of the clap on the track was kind of like
paprika. So it's like a little extra spice and something that helps move things through. What I would suggest is maybe either playing with effects or having something that kind of flows throughout. So kind of like not necessarily a phaser, but something that doesn't overpower, but kind of flows through that track so that it gives a little something more. Because like right now, it really does feel like 1, 2, 3, 4. But I think you did a nice job with your EQing. I absolutely love that reverse at that one point.
Yeah.
Like, those were some nice touches. So good on you.
Very nice. Okay, next up, Christian. Let's get it.
Okay.
Ooh.
Let's hear it.
I still like, even if I did or didn't, I still want you guys to hear what I made.
Music is subjective. There is no right or wrong answer.
Cool.
But I'll give you a right or wrong answer.
How's that fair? Alright.
Okay.
Alright, so I had no idea how this is gonna work out. I just decided to write a rap for the song, and we're just gonna kind of go off. Yo, listen, let's talk about a young man, said about 5'6", filled with knowledge and discipline, but about to get his fix with his girl by his side. Her name is Mary Jane, cause she said to stay in your lane, cause this is her game. Now we act lovable, Molly in the air without a care. There sits a loner in disguise, black hoodie jorts and the bags in his eyes, but don't worry about that, cause he's here and he's trying to vibe, yeah. Vibe, let's go. Vibe, yeah. Vibe, come on out and feel this vibe. Yo, dude, come on. You gotta get up, man. There's a midterm. That's why I'm trying to wake your ass up. Come on. Get up. What is that smell? Oh, God. I swear, since you've been smoking weed, you are always like this now. Just...
Man's made a skit too.
Yo, give it up for him.
Alright, let's do the vision. What's up?
Alright, so I'm Christian, but as a producer and an artist, I go by Difference, spelled DFRNC. So,
He has a different way of spelling it.
yes, I do.
Difference.
So, how I went about this was I spent the first 5 seconds saying, fuck you, Emma, for the sample. And then when I kind of pictured it, kind of going forth, I wanted to go at it through a, because I heard the song multiple times, I kind of wanted to be like, oh, this is something I recognize. So I kind of wanted to be like, Rise in the Morning. So what I did was I took part of the sample and then made a bandwidth EQ over it, which was which gave it that radio effect. And I took the same one and then put it in a plugin that I have called Arcade, which is like how would I say it? It's basically messes up samples in real time. So it kind of blended in with another sample that came with the plugin, which was like, you know, birds chirping and everything, but really it just kind of like moved the sample in random spots, which kind of gave it like, you know, that radio feeling along with the EQ that I did. And then from then forth, as you heard, I kind of made a story with it. So I thought about like, okay, it's a guy rising in the morning, and then it switches straight to kind of the nighttime, and he's about to go party his ass off, get drunk, and get high, things like that. So, I wanted to make it kind of more like a bumpy kind of feel, 4 on the floor, things like that, kind of messing up with the kick a little bit. From then forth, it just came with layering, and I just kind of tried to pick different instruments that could go along with that as well. One of them, Alchemy, was my best friend because I use Logic Pro, so Alchemy is a really good plugin when you're trying to get digital synths and sounds. From then forth, I kind of came up with the end. I took the same sample that I had when I cut it from the original, and then I put it in a sampler called EXS24. And all I did was just added pitch to it, which meant like wherever I hit it, it would either speed up or slow down. So I hit it at a certain area, which it was really slow. But then if you listen, I might have to play it again too, but if you listen, there's a spot where it goes like doot, 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 doot. That's all the sample. And I'm just like kind of acting it like a hi-hat. And then I switched it to one shot, which means I just hit it and then it started slowing down. And because I had the idea of having it be a guy, waking up in the morning and then going to go party his ass off later, I'm like, you know what? I'll make a fucking rap to it, because why the hell not? So,
How long did the rap take you to make?
Like 10 minutes at most.
Pretty quick. Alright.
I just saw, I just started freestyling in my head and started off, let's talk about a man who stand about 5'6", and then just kind of went from there. Kind of played it off on the fact that he was getting high, so his girl being Mary Jane, at the club, Bob Marley in the air, without a care, little metaphors like that, and then at the end it's clear that like he smoked.
It is Freestyle Fridays, you were right.
So added that little at the end. Wish I had more time to kind of clean up everything, because bass it's very bass heavy, especially when I added it. I didn't really have time to mix the way I wanted it to, but I'm happy with the way it turned out. I like the concept that came with it. So.
All right, that was quick.
I think you did a solid job with this. I have to hand it to you with the creativity of like making a skit in the intro and outro of that, because that's the extra mile of looking at a piece of music, or even just the idea of auditory storytelling and finding a way to transform it a little bit more. A lot of people. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely adore the Tron soundtrack and Random Access Memories by Daft Punk, is because it subverted the expectations of a lot of people who typically would see that as like Daft Punk, dance music, of course, but playing with different ideas. And one of my favorite tracks from Random Access Memories was where it started with the house producer just talking about, getting into music, living in his car for a few months, just so that he didn't have to pay for an apartment or whatnot, so that he had the opportunity to do gigs at some place, and then hard work, and becomes a legend later on in time.
Right.
Becomes part of one of the most recognized albums of all time. But incredibly playful. I mean, only little things here and there in terms of like, I'm sure little polish work that you can do later on, maybe playing around with maybe either melody jumping in here and there, but I'd say it's fine in terms of having it be bass heavy. But if you're kind of like getting that like bounce feel, maybe find ways that you can play with that a little bit more, so that it really feels like kind of like a house bounce type feel. Because I don't think it necessarily is housey, but it definitely has that opportunity to like really like give that vibe, so that you're kind of like riding that wave up and down.
Alright. Good for you. Now, last but not least is our very own B-Boy Limit with Jay. Okay, let's hear it.
Service of Revolution.
Yeah.
I don't have that on my computer. I'm pretty sure I don't.
Sad.
I have Totoro music more than I do that.
You don't gotta out yourself as a weeb, my dude.
Yeah.
From?
For
You didn't ask me in Japan?
I didn't have time to make an intro, so I was just gonna like go into it, and it's kind of loud, maybe. I
Hey,
didn't
go
mix
in and
it
dry.
yet.
It's okay. Let's go.
My ears.
That was fast.
I know, right?
Already broke my speakers.
Yeah.
Damn, Regina, self-confidence? That's good.
Shit.
All right, what's the vision?
All right.
Yo, give it a round of
Yeah.
applause for this guy. Yo.
All right. So we're the Breaking Club. Oh wait, before that, my name is Wenjay. Some of you might know me.
Oh, Jay.
My b-boy name is B-Boy Limit. My producer name is Moo. Yeah. Surface of revolution, baby, is deeper than the surface. Anyways, so originally, we're the Breaking Club. So I wanted to try and make a break beat, but yeah. So then for the main like lead, I wanted to just kind of chop up a guitar, like the guitar section, and then chop up a vocal section. So I started with chopping the vocal section, and it sounded like trash. So I skipped to the guitar section. Couldn't come up with a good melody, so I just took a loop and spent some time on that. Went back to the guitar section. Started to figure out a melody, and then Emma knocked on my door. Fuck. So I just stuck, a couple chords underneath the guitar loop, and then just kind of randomly spread them out so that it would make a bass line. And here I am. There we go.
Pretty good. Alright. My bad for 2 hours. Alright, what are you gonna say?
So I think you did a pretty solid job in terms of taking that sample and then also finding drums that really complemented it, because that's a hard thing to figure out sometimes, and it's a difficult thing to, over time, kind of get used to the idea of understanding what sounds really mesh well with other things. So getting a sample and finding what drums work with it, or trying to find a melody and you've got a particular piano or keyboard or string or whatever, and finding that thing that's really going to complement it. I think you did a really good job in that regard. Given the time frame, it's understandable that you weren't able to flesh it out as much. I definitely would suggest working on a little bit of EQing here and there, trying to find a way to maybe bring up the sample when the vocals kick in to kind of mesh it a little bit more with the drums. And then that break part, I'd say one of the things you can do to help lead into with the vocals coming in is maybe finding ways to tease that sample coming in and finding ways to kind of bring it up. So an example of that in a sense is, and it bothers the hell out of me when it comes to DJing breaks and stuff, or trying to sample something, is when you have James Brown or somebody else. No, it's Mystical on a track that, what's his face, Ronson, whatever. He did the Bruno Mars song, Uptown. Yeah, Mark Ronson.
Oh,
So Mark Ronson made a track, and then during the break, Mystical did not shut up. And it bothers me because I want to be able to keep that going, but because of how he cuts into things, it's bothersome. But I digress. Just find ways to pepper it in so that kind of leads up. Says it's kind of like the stereotypical trance song that type deal, but there's probably another better way to explain it, but I think you kind of like jump around the bone, but it's all work.
Nice. Those were all full contestants, and I will give James maybe 5 to 10 minutes to think about a verdict, and we'll have like a very soft winner of the evening. I'll buy them boba.
Now, before we get into that, I actually want to do two things. One, I want to showcase a couple of my beats, and then I want you guys to help me do a impromptu rhythm roulette right here, right now. You guys into that?
Sure. Yeah. Roulette.
All right. By raising hands, who doesn't know what rhythm roulette is?
Literally everyone.
Wow.
Oh boy. So rhythm